Welcome Tech Brothers. Now in this video we are going to learn about Synapse Pipelines. So just want to give you background a little bit like why we use them, and then we will go into definitions and everything. So if you remember that when we started working on Azure Synapse Workspace, we were at the home page, and then we went to the data here, and we have covered some basic concept, what is a lake database, and creating different tables in the lake databases, so we created a Parquet and Delta and different format tables. Also, we learned about different SQL type of databases available in the Synapse. So we learn serverless SQL pools and dedicated SQL pool. So often you know that let's say you have serverless SQL pool, and then there are external tables you have to create on for the files which sits in your storage. So think about a scenario when I have a lot of files sitting on my computer locally, let's say on premises, and then I need to create those or move those files to the Azure storage, and from there you want to create these external table. I need some tool that I can copy the file from my on premises to the Azure storage. So that's where you will be using Azure Synapse, or in the other videos I have done on Azure Data Factory. Those tools Azure Data Factory can be used, but in the Synapse you call that same Azure Data Factory. Pretty much all the components are same, and you call them the Synapse pipelines. Think about another scenario. Maybe I have this created a dedicated SQL pool database table, and I have to load the data to these tables. And my table is the source table is Azure SQL DB. Then how I will read the data from Azure SQL DB or Oracle DB and then load into the dedicated SQL pool. I need some ETL tool to perform those operations, and that's where the Synapse pipeline comes in. Now, where you find them in this portal, if you go right here, you will be going to this integration tab, and that's where you will click on plus sign, and then you have all different pipeline, linked connection, copy data tool, browse gallery, and import from pipeline template. So we will go through pretty much all of them. But I have already created videos on a lot of Azure Data Factory. You can watch those. Go to my channel, and then you will be able to find them. Let me open the channel and show you. So here, if you will take a look on the Azure Data Factory pipelines, I have 198 videos, and then you can click on any of them, and you can go from there. So if you see, I have from very basic to all the way to the complex videos, how to read the files, how to read data from different type of databases and load to the blob storage or ADLS2, Gen2, and tons of other information, reading JSON files, arrays, and whatnot. So there is a complete playlist for you, so you can go through each of them and watch and learn Azure Data Factory. Once you know the entire Azure Data Factory, you will be able to come here in the Synapse and create any pipeline. But anyways, if you don't want to go there and just want to stick with the Synapse tutorials, I'm going to create maybe 10 to 15 videos in this tutorial as well. So I will try to introduce all the different important topics and try to cover as much as I can here. So first of all, you can go ahead and create a pipeline here by just pressing a button pipeline, and it says the pipeline. Now let's take a look on the definitions, and then I will also try to explain here as well. Synapse pipelines are the orchestration layer in Azure Synapse Analytics. They allow you to move, transform, and control data workflows within and outside the Synapse. And I have told you examples such as reading a data from Azure SQL DB and writing to the dedicated SQL pool, or reading the data from your maybe on-premises and putting into the Azure storage, and then you creating the external tables for those files. Now think of it as a control flow engine for running multiple data activities in a defined sequence. So when you create this pipeline, you have all different activities available right there. So these are grouped by these folders, and if you go to Synapse, so let's say I create a notebook in the PySpark, and I want to call it and run it, I can simply drag this one here, and then simply and after that maybe I want to run a store procedure, so I will say script, and there is a script under the journal. I can go ahead and connect them, and this is the workflow you can see right there. So it is going to run this one, on completion run this one, and if I have another task that I need to do, maybe I will do copy activity on some tables, I can always go here, and in case of failure of this second script, I want to run the copy activity. You see that you're handling the control here as well. So you have a notebook activity here, then you have a script activity here, then you have copy activity, and you can control either you want to run them on success or failure or completion. Now let's go back to here, and it is built on top of Azure Data Factory, sharing many of the same features and UI patterns. So let me take you to the Azure Data Factory here. If I will close this Azure Data Factory, I'm gonna leave this, go to the portal here, and in the portal I have this Azure Data Factory called TBADF. So I'm gonna launch the Azure Data Factory Studio here, and then I'm going to show you. It is pretty much the same what we were seeing in Synapse Pipelines. So here is the author, and click on author. You see the pipelines here. Go click on the pipeline and create a new pipeline now. So once you create a new pipeline, you remember seeing the Synapse notebooks and all that. You have a script and everything. So we can bring a notebook here, and then I can say script, and I can bring the script here and connect these, and then I can use a copy activity if I want to use so on failure I want to use a copy activity. So this is the same what you see right here. So there is not a big difference between these. There could be very small differences that I will try to explain in the video. Let's go back to our notes here, and now we understand that the pipeline is a workflow that has many activities, and we can control those activities depending upon the failure or success of the previous activities. And next, what we have a comparison here, and Synapse Pipelines versus Azure Data Factory Pipelines. So built-in Spark support. So you know that we can create the Spark pools inside Synapse Analytics. And in the Azure Data Factory, you don't have the option to create that pools. In the Azure Data Factory, what you have here, in case let's say you have a notebook, you want to go ahead and go to settings here. You tell which notebook to use, so you have to make a connection to that Azure Databricks or something, and then you will be telling, hey, Apache Spark pool, and then you select, and then you will be creating those. So here, let's say if I want to go right here, and then select right there, and add, so we can do all those connections. First of all, actually I have to create new link service for that. So I can connect to the Azure Synapse if I want to and use from there, or I have to create the Databricks cluster and then use it. So it depends. It is not the built-in that we have there in the our Synapse. So in Synapse, if I will go back to the pipeline here, I click right there, and we click right here, and Spark pool, go right there, and already I have a Spark pool, so it's going to use that Spark pool right away. So but in the Azure Data Factory, you will be using Azure Databricks cluster to run those notebooks. Now let's go back to our notes here, and then we have tightly integrated with the Synapse SQL. So we know that we have already SQL dedicated pool and serverless SQL pool, so we can use those in this pipelines. But in the Azure Data Factory, you don't have dedicated SQL pool, or you don't have serverless SQL pool. What you have to do, you have to create the linked services to different databases, such as maybe Azure SQL DB, or even to this dedicated SQL pool. So that's a separate work you have to do by creating linked services. Notebook execution, yes, we can execute here. No, notebook execution is not really possible without creating the first linked service to the Azure Databricks and telling what we want to do. Now in this, I have already showed you right here in the notebook. You simply go select the notebooks right here. That's very easy, convenient, and then you have right there like, hey, which Spark pool you want to use. So that's much easier in Synapse. In Azure Data Factory, if you go here and go right here in the notebooks, let's say settings in the notebook, you don't have notebook here, so you have to make all those connections, create the link services, and then you go from there. Now, in the other parts, what we see there, CI/CD and Git integration is available in both of them, and yeah, that you can go to the, I believe you can give me 1 second, and if you go home, and here is manage, and here is your you will find it right here, Git configuration right there under the source control, and you can configure in Azure Data Factory. Also, you should be able to do the same thing in the manage here, and here somewhere you have Git configuration right there. Okay, so you have right there in the Synapse pipelines as well right there. Okay, now what you can do, where we were here, and then you have UI and authoring, and that's available in both of them. You can once you're done with the pipelines, you can publish them, they will save under the folder and all that. That's also available in the Azure Data Factory. Note, for most use cases, the Synapse pipeline offer everything Azure Data Factory does, plus a deep integration with Spark, Synapse, SQL, and notebooks. So that's on top of it what ADF provides. Now, core components of a Synapse pipeline. So let's talk about that. The very first one will be pipeline, a logical container for grouping and orchestrating activities. So you see that I can go ahead and create a new pipeline whenever I want. So I go to integration here, and then I will be creating a pipeline. So this is going to be your main place where you will put activities. And now, what is activity? A single task such as copy activity, run notebook, execute SQL script. So I have shown you guys already in the pipeline. You have activities, and you can connect them with the way you want them to run in the sequence. Or if you disconnect them, I mean, you can run them in parallel as well. So if you don't want to connect, you can leave them unconnected, and they will be running parallel. Now, a trigger time-based, event-based, or manual execution mechanism. So once we create this pipeline, we have to execute them. So here is the debug button. You can go ahead and debug, and it's going to start running your pipeline right away and run activities after one another. Or you can add trigger, and then you can trigger right here, say trigger now, or new, or edit, and then you can choose a trigger. So in this case, we don't have a trigger. We can go ahead and add a new trigger, and there are different types of triggers available. We can schedule. Well, maybe we want to run every 4 hours or 10 hours, so we can schedule them. We have a tumbling window trigger, and then we have storage event trigger, and then we have custom events. So different type of triggers available, but most of the time we'll be using a schedule trigger. If you want to watch detail about what is tumbling window, what is storage event, what is custom event triggers, I have a complete videos on all of them, and you will go to the Azure Data Factory playlist on my YouTube channel, and go from there. Also, one more thing you can do, you can always go TechBrothersIT.com, and here I will show you, if you have Azure Data Factory tutorial step by step, and cancel this out, and you can see I have put this all in the steps, like an introduction, how to do the GitHub, how to do copy activity, and then there will be delete, web activity, and all that. You will find the triggers as well. So you can go from here, and then watch the way you want to watch, in different sequences of these videos, would make sense to you. Let's go back here, and now what we are going to do, we are going to cancel this, and we know that we can trigger, or we can run our pipeline in different duration by scheduling it by using the trigger. Okay, now integration runtime, the compute used for data movement and transformation. So we called it integration runtime, IR. There are different type of IRs available, and then if you go to Azure Data Factory, and then let's say you are in here in pipelines, and let me go to manage here, and you will see the integration runtime right here. So auto resolve runtime, that's mostly you will be using, and this is when everything is on the cloud. So you will be like, hey, I want to copy the data from my blob storage or ADLS2 Gen 2 to the some other folder. Maybe you want to read the data from your Azure SQL DB and write to the storage account. So you will be using auto resolve integration runtime. This is nothing but a computer under the hood that run your pipelines, and you are built for that one. So I will cover a video how the billing works in Synapse pipelines, so you would know. So if you are running a Azure Data Factory pipeline with the copy activity or data flow or other activities, how much charges you will be paying to the Microsoft. Now there is another one called self-hosted IR. That means if you need to read the data from your on-premises, then you will be using self-hosted. This self-hosted will be installed on one of the computer that maybe you can have that computer in Azure cloud or maybe any other cloud or on premises, and then install self-hosted IR. So this IR or compute will be used from that computer on which you will install. So this service will help you to read the data from your on-premises to your cloud. So I will go and actually will make some small maybe more detailed video on this one too. But I have, as I told you, I have a detailed video on the Azure Data Factory pipeline with all these details and how to configure and everything. Now in the Synapse, if you go right here and you are here in the integration, you can let me see. You have right here integration runtimes. So you go to the monitor here, and you have integration runtimes. So you can see right there you have all the self-hosted Azure, Azure SSIS. So there are different type of IRs available to you, and whichever is running here you can see right there. You can go right here. Let me see where you create that. To create the IRs, you will click on the manage, and then you go to the integration runtimes, and here you can go ahead and create either you want to use the self-hosted IR or you want to use auto resolve, and all those are available. So if you do Azure, then it asks you different in which region, and you want to do East US or whatever. So it gives you different regions, and then you have virtual networks, and then if you are using a data flow, then it also asks you what is the size of those. Then you tell like, hey, how many cores you will be using for the data flow IR when it's going to run the data flow. So we will go to the data flow and all that. So but you see that we have different IRs available. These are different computes to run our pipelines. But normally you will be using auto resolve integration runtime. That's already running and available. So you just simply use this one, and it will run your copy activity or your script task or other activities in the pipeline. Now let's go back to our slide here and take a look. We have spent good amount of time here. Let's go to example now or use cases. So copy files from ADLS Gen 2 into Synapse SQL table every hour if you want to do that. So how would your pipeline would look like? First of all, you will use copy activity inside the pipeline. Then you will create the linked service to your source and sink. So we will be creating two link services. One will be pointing to our source and one will be pointing to our sink. That's the destination. Then we'll use a schedule trigger, and then that trigger will be used to run that pipeline every hour. Then we have to tell which compute to use. The integration runtime is that will handle the compute behind the scene. So we have to say auto resolve, or if we have created our own, then we have to provide accordingly. Now best practices, use parameterized pipelines for reusability. So when you are making a connection to some source, so maybe the database name can change. So in this case you can make them parameterized and change the database name. So think about that, like I have these three databases, and if this is one of my destination, and tomorrow maybe my destination will change on this server, or in this Synapse workspace or others workspace, and I want to be deploying to other workspaces, maybe database name change or is different on different workspaces, then it is a good idea to create the Synapse pipelines with the parameters, so you can provide the value for those different items that can change, in this case like database name. So monitor pipelines through the Synapse Studio monitors right there. So we go here and say let me see, pipeline runs, and that's where you're going to see all the pipeline runs. We are going to take a look in this one as well. And then finally you have combine activities such as notebook plus copy activity to build complex workflows. I showed you how to do that. You can put multiple things together here. Now the last thing is prefer use auto resolve IR integration runtime unless you need self-hosted for on-premises sources. As I said that if you need to read the data from on-premises, then you will be using a self-hosted. Otherwise, on the Azure cloud, pretty much you will be using auto resolve IR. That's the computer you will be using to move the data between maybe ADLS Gen 2 to the dedicated SQL pool, or read the data from Azure SQL DB to the dedicated SQL pool. So different scenarios you will be using pretty much auto resolve. But in case when you need to read the data from your on-premises files or databases, then you will be using self-hosted. And there is a whole video I have how to install the self-hosted IR on the computer and how to use in the Azure Data Factory. I have a complete video on this in my playlist, so you can watch it. So I thank you very much for watching. I hope this is a lengthy video, and I hope you learned the basic concept from here. In the next video, we are going to start working on the real pipelines. See you guys in the next video.